Hello, I am going to do my best to explain with words and visualization how in Orisries the heroes work and what you need to do in order to make successful legions and to deal damage. So, the first thing we are going to have to talk about is the different types of skills. There are different types of skills in the game. A skill is something that the hero has, and depending on the skill, there's a different effect. All right, so an active skill is always red. That is very important. And I'm kind of drawing at the same time because there might be some people watching that don't actually understand English. Okay, so an active skill is basically a direct attack or a direct skill, basically. Or perhaps we could even say this is a hero ability. So let's do that. Hero. Okay, then there's another type of skill. Because you are leading an army, the other type of skill is a follow-up skill. And that is this. And it is always yellow. So let us switch the color to yellow because a follow-up skill is always yellow. And a follow-up skill always applies. Okay, let's try to do this nice. Troop. So that's a troop skill. Because it basically applies to the troop itself. It is a skill that the troop that the hero leads will use by themselves. Now, let's find the next type of skill. And that would be a counter skill. So a counter skill is always purple. We are going to be using pink. And a counter skill is basically a reaction. But it is also a troop skill. So a troop reaction. Okay, and then we only have one skill left, which is a trait skill. And I don't actually know if we are going to be able to find someone with a trait skill in here. No, not there. This is what we were looking for. So this trait skill is also yellow. So do not get it confused with the follow-up skill. It is not a follow-up skill. It is not a follow-up skill. A trait skill is something completely different. So a trait skill is a skill that gives a bonus ability to the hero itself. And I don't think there's any way to really explain this other than that. There is a bonus ability. And this bonus ability can apply to the hero or to the other heroes. So let's try to visualize all this. Let's try to visualize these skills and how they work by using this presentation. So in this case, this follow-up skill increases the active skill damage by 4.72 for 4 turns up to 3 stacks. And that is after using an active skill. Okay, so we have that in mind. So now let's go ahead and try to see if we can explain this. So an active skill, we're going to talk about an active skill first, is a skill that a hero uses. So in this case, this is a direct attack, and we're going to have to see what the active skill here is. This is the active skill in question. Every 1 turn, there is a chance to launch 2 magic missiles that deal magic damage to 1 random enemy troop, and there's also a chance that it might actually launch 3. Okay, so let us now visualize what that is in fact. So this is an active skill that targets an enemy unit, or basically it targets the enemy, right? And then we also have a trait skill, and this trait skill gives us plus so that gives us attack. My god, I cannot draw. God. There we go. So this is the trait skill. It gives us attack after we have successfully executed an active skill. So maybe we should draw this on here. Plus DPS. Okay, that is probably the better representation of that. Okay. And then that is how an active skill and a trait can work together. And we have other active skills. Other active skills can also target your own characters, for example. So an active skill can either attack the hero, the troop, or it can target yourself. Now a follow-up skill is a bit different, because a follow-up skill is basically a skill that the troop uses themselves. Or they might use it on another troop, or they might use it on the enemy hero, or they might use it on their own hero. So that is that, right? So this is the best representation that I can give to how skills basically work. It's like active skills are always the hero is actively targeting, right? So now the counter skill. The counter skill is basically that when the troop gets attacked, then the counter skill will activate. And the counter skill is basically a shield. And then the counter skill can apply to the enemy hero, to the own hero, to another troop, or simply to the troop itself. So we're going to highlight that with a little plus. Okay, so that is what a counter skill is. It is a reaction to a active skill. So that explains that. Hopefully now you understand what all these are. We have already talked about a trait skill. A trait skill is basically when a hero gets like another ability. This is this is me trying to use a symbol that basically is an ability. So this symbol means ability. Okay, so now that we understand what the different skills are and what they do, now, actually, maybe I forgot one thing, because an active skill can, in fact, also target one of your own troops, right? So an active skill can also target your own troop. I completely forgot that. That is also an active skill. All right, now take your time to look at this. Pause it, try to remember it. It is really that simple. It is really that simple. And it will make it a lot easier for you to figure out what a hero actually does, right? Now, let us look at something else, and that is actually going ahead and building a legion for yourself. So when you are building your legion, you're always going to look at a 3-man team, right? And you're always starting with 1, and then you kind of try to make 1 and 2, have really good synergy. You're trying to make that, work really well, So I suppose, how can I highlight this? Is maybe I can draw like a arrow like this and an arrow like that, and then we're gonna say like this works really well, right? So like there's a lot of synergy here. And then what you want in 3 is that wait, I forgot the dot. So with the 3rd hero, you kind of want to complement that. You kind of want to pick something that is going to complement that. So first, look at these in like their own bracket, if we're going to use that, right? So these work really well together. They're one solid unit, right? And then what we're doing is adding this to it. And then this becomes the whole legion, right? So that is basically how I would recommend that you build your legions. So you have a couple of different options. You can start out with hero DPS. Or you can start out with troop DPS. And so depending on which one you pick, it will give you different options for number 2. Okay, so maybe we will do a white line instead. Okay, so if you pick a hero DPS, you do not actually, okay, so maybe we need to do it like so, right? So, and then for troop DPS, like so. Okay, so when you pick a hero DPS, you do not want to, for example, pick up something that is like a troop buff, right? This, you do not want that. On the other hand, troop buff, when you pick the troop DPS, that is a good combination. So we're going to use a little check mark and say that that is good. On the other hand, what you might want to actually, let me keep this. Okay, so on the other hand, what you want, or what you could get, is a hero buff. Right? So that then is great. On the other hand, a hero buff, when you went with troop DPS, is actually bad. We don't want that, right? And so this sort of becomes like that situation, right? And so then we also have a tank, which is good in both situations. And we also have healer. Oh, that is not a pretty E. Oh, come on. Okay, so as you can see, you sort of, depending on what you start out with, right? You're going to want to pick based on that. And then, well, you're gonna have to think about, so like basically now you're gonna have to think about what, are you going to add, to that. So this can become a bit more complex then, because it really depends on what you've picked. Because if you have picked a healer, let's say you've picked a healer, then you might want a tank, or you might want to have a buff, or you might want to have more DPS, but you don't want another healer, right? Definitely not. If you went with tank, on the other hand, you definitely would like to see a healer in there. You might want to see another DPS. A buff is also nice. But you definitely don't want another tank, right? That much is true. And what you also don't want is troop related stuff. Don't want that. You definitely don't want that. Unless, here's the thing, unless unless they are self-sufficient, right? Unless you don't actively have to do anything to make them work. So yeah, maybe, right? Maybe. And so the same applies to when you go with the troop. You might not actually want to go with that if you went down the yellow section. Then you don't want the hero buff, because unless and that is, you know, the alternative, you actually take hero DPS. This is a viable option. And then if you pick that option, then that makes sense, right? So we can say that it does depend. It does depend, right? So ideally, you first find the hero that you want to start with, and you figure out what is the best that I can add to this hero, depending on what it is that you want to do, right? So let's look at some examples for that. I am about to delete this, so if you want to keep it, take a screenshot, whatever you want to do. This is not like a complete thing, it is just to give you like an idea. Okay, so now if we were to pick something, right, we can start looking for our heroes and we can try to see what it is that they're good at, right? So here we have Wanyan. Wanyan is a DPS, right? So Wanyan would be a DPS. She deals a lot of damage, and so she is DPS. So that would be DPS. So let me go back and say we are going to pick. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. So for 1, we would pick a DPS, and we would either pick Wanyan or we would pick her, right? So she's another DPS that I have. That's another DPS. Right, so these are my DPS options. So I'm going to try my best to kind of like highlight this in the best way that I can, at least. So how can I do that? So she uses active skills. So we're going to pick a DPS in this case with Wanyan. Now there's another thing that is important to note, right? And that is this. The troop type. And so that's the troop type that we're gonna have to choose, right? So the troop type, in this case, is going to be important to figure out. And for that, we are going to choose Holy Blades. And I'm going to try to explain this. So, no. Yes. And I will try to explain why, you know. And see, the thing is, this unit gives us more DPS for heroes. This unit, on the other hand, gives us troop DPS, yellow, right? We want red DPS, not yellow DPS, right? This is red, so that's why we want red. And so now I'm going to delete this and we're going to pick a different hero and we're going to do that again. And this time we're going to pick a different hero and I'm going to pick a different unit and I'm going to explain it again. So in this case, we're now going to pick this hero. But we're going to use yellow. So in this case, we have troop DPS. Because she uses follow-up skills. And we've explained what a follow-up skill is earlier. So that is now a troop DPS hero that we have picked here. So the hero then, you know, because this is troop DPS. And the other one is hero DPS. There we go. What we want is this, and what we don't want is this. We also don't want this or that. We don't want this. We don't want that. But we want this, right? So this kind of like helps you understand a little bit more about, you know, like what you would do, right? So now that we have done that, now we can look at, you know, some other options here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go with our hero DPS. And now the question becomes, what do we pick here? You know, and we want to increase the DPS. Or we want to increase the healing. Or basically how long they survive. These are the options that we have. So let's see which heroes we have that we could apply to that. So now we're going to have to pick a different hero. So in this case, no, we don't want that. Disqualified, disqualified, disqualified. So these are disqualified because they do not have the requirements of what we are looking for. On the other hand, Helen is actually, in this case, a very good option. But it does depend, right? It does depend. So because of this, she's also disqualified. Because that applies to the yellow, right? So that applies to, you know, the troops. So we don't want that. What we're looking for instead is someone that can buff the hero. So here we have an option for that. Increasing the damage dealt by 2 of your own heroes for 16%. So that is what we're looking for, right? And it's a buff plus DPS. Okay, so we have successfully selected someone to take along. And again, we do not want to take this unit. Instead, what we want to take is this unit. Because again, this unit gives us DPS, whereas this unit gives us troop DPS. And now we have the big question to answer, and that is what to pick now. And you have a couple of options, right? So your options are healer, or DPS, I would stay away from troop because of the active skill of this character. Means that, you know, we do not want to actually take troops with us because this character boosts the attack of the heroes, right? So that's why we don't want that. We could also take a tank. So these are the options that you have. You're going to have to select one of them. And which one? That depends. That really depends on the situation. Neither of these is wrong, right? The healer is good. A DPS is good. A tank is also good. It depends on the situation. It really does depend on the situation. There is no right or wrong in this case. The only thing that is really, really wrong, is this. That is the only thing that I would say is absolutely tragically wrong in this setup. So, in our case, I think I would prefer to pick a healer. And so you can pick whichever healer you want. I have 2 healers that are a good option here. However, because of this skill as a healer, she's disqualified. You're disqualified. You're disqualified. You're disqualified. No. You're disqualified. So you're gonna have to pick, right? And then this is a healer. This is a DPS. This is a tank. This is a healer. So you're gonna have to choose. In our case, we're going to go with the healer. And now, what's important is to pick the right unit again for the healer. This is the wrong unit to take for the healer. On the other hand, the unit that is correct to take is this one. Because now there's something that we're going to look at, which is the troops and their skills. So we have a tank option here. And on the other hand, if we go and check out the other unit that we were looking at, then what you can see is that this unit does not come with a skill that is actually compatible. Oh. Because this is again a troop. DPS unit. Right? So this is a troop DPS unit, and that means that we are not going to have any effect. It is not going to be effective on the hero, right? Whereas these skills will be effective on the hero that we are using. So rather than take an effective skill, right? And what I want you to pay attention to as well is that is this, right? Now let's go look at the other unit that is comparable to this. Right? Do you remember? Right? So we're gonna write that down. So the Seraph 18 to 24. And in this case, it's less. So the tank option 13 to 17. right? There's that. But there is another option, which is this. Okay, and so here, hero DPS. And then the most important part is the last one, right? So the last skill is the one that is really important. So this is for physical, right? This is for physical damage dealing heroes. This is for magical damage dealing heroes. Or basically legions that deal magic damage, right? Or, well, heroes actually. So it doesn't affect the whole legion, it does affect the hero. So that is something you're gonna have to keep in mind as you go through these things, right? And you also have another unit here which has another effect. So you're gonna have to try and pick which, units are like the best option for the hero that you have. So for healers, I really like this option because it just lowers the damage overall and allows the healer to both perform as a debuffer and a healer at the same time. But if you need more damage from your healer, you would go with this. You would go with this unit if you need more damage from your healer, because the healer actually, I need to go here. So the healer actually has a lot of attack because of this, right? So this is another aspect to the hero, is the skills, right? Which skill should you level up? Which abilities should you level up? That is not always easy to figure out, right? But the abilities that I would recommend to basically always pick are this, maybe this, right? So let's do this, maybe this, and then one of these. So you're either going to take this or that or that. So you're either going to go with attack if your hero uses active skills. You're going to go for moral if your hero uses troops. And you might want to go for these if your hero is a tank. And so the speed of the hero can be good for healers and buffers or DPS. It is basically good for almost all types of heroes. So I would say generally, I would say this one, yes. And then this one is a big maybe, because how much speed you need will depend on certain factors, right? Depending on, what this says over here, right? Because there's some other heroes, right, that benefit a lot from speed, right? So like, as you can see, this hero, for example, benefits a lot from speed, which then means, that perhaps for this hero, speed again would be great. So I hope that so far this has been easy enough to understand. And so now we're going to throw in a little bit of a bonus, which is to talk about two heroes that were requested. So now that we've covered everything, I'm going to talk about two specific heroes and how they work and what you could potentially do with them. So the first hero we're going to look at is actually Flora. So Flora, let's use the colors that we have gotten used to. Flora is hero DPS. Right. So she uses active skills to deal damage, right? And she has the ability to increase DPS, but from a trait, right? So Flora has a trait that can increase her ability to deal damage. So that is basically Flora. And this trait depends on other heroes also using active skills. Okay, let's. Okay, so Flora, wants to be in a party with other heroes that use active skills. So in your party, you do not want follow-up skills. No. You do not want follow-up skills. What you want is active skills in the other heroes that you're taking, right? That it doesn't matter if they are a tank or a healer as long as they use active skills. So now let's look at these skills actually in depth, right? So we have two active skills. So let's look at the active skills first. So we have this active skill. So let's see, what does this skill do? This skill is an assassination skill. What does that mean? It means, right? So we're gonna have to do a little representation here now. So we have our party of 3. right? And we have the enemies. I mean, you get it, right? So the enemies are just going to be triangles, right? So that's the enemies, right? And now we're going to draw their health, right? So and we're going to draw the rest of the health bar. Right. This is Flora, right? This here is Flora. And so now her assassination is going to target here. And it is not going to target here or there, right? No, no. Always the one that has the lowest health. That is how that skill works, right? So that is what I mean by its assassination, because it deals damage to the unit with the lowest health. Okay, let's look at the other skill here that we have and figure out what that is. There's a chance to reduce the physical defense of the enemy with the lowest HP for 2 turns and increase the physical defense and magic defense for 2 of your own troops for 2 turns. Okay, so this one is a enemy debuff and an ally buff. Right, so what that means is that that skill, what it does is it lowers the armor. So let's do this, right? Let's show that with a shield. So this skill lowers that and also targets the unit with the lowest HP. And what it also does at the same time is that it buffs the defense on your own side. Can I draw this better maybe? Right, so it is buffing your defense and lowering the enemy defense. Specifically the enemy defense that Flora is basically right, so Flora is attacking directly, right? DPS. Okay, let's make this a better D. My god. Okay, so that is so far the spread, like the little cheat of her abilities. Now we're gonna have to look at her trait ability. So her trait ability is what makes Flora so interesting, right? So her trait ability gives basically an ability to the other heroes as well. and to herself too, right? Which means that every time an active skill is used, there is a chance to deal physical damage to one troop. Prioritizing the first one, right? So if we were to put little numbers here, so this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. The other skills went with whoever has the lowest HP. This skill deals damage to Brigade 1. So the leader of the brigade is the one that is being damaged here the most. So if they attack here, what that is going to do is that it is also going to attack here. And if you have a healer and this healer is healing here, there's also a chance that that is also going to attack here. So what Flora is good at is target DPS. Right. So where does that leave us in terms of what kind of, what kind of, allies do we want to use? What kind of legion do we want to build? And honestly, Flora is probably one of the easiest ones to really build for, because what you want in an ally, legion. Okay, actually, let's leave here and let's head into here. So let's say we have Flora here. Right. Then what we want to add is active skills. Right? So we need active skill. And another active skill. Right? So we want active skills for all of these. We could do a healer. That is a good option. Right? And then we could either do hero DPS or buff or debuff. These are the options. You could also throw a tank in there. But personally, most tanks I find do not actually have active skills, for one. And second of all, your Flora team is, not exactly what you want, because it is an assassin. Flora is an assassin. So these options are the ones that you want to have. And then for third, you could also go with more DPS or more buff or debuff. But I would say that probably the healer is the best option in this case, because you always want a healer. Basically, you always benefit from a healer, really. So you always benefit. So one good option to have is actually Helen, right? So Helen, let's actually pick a hero that is going to stand in for Flora. I don't actually have anyone. Let's pick him, right? And then for Flora, you also want to use these guys. But actually what you want to use is a different kind, right? So let's see. No, neither of those. Okay, what you want for Flora actually is these guys. These are the ones that you want to use for Flora. So let's go back in here, right? And then you could go with Helen, because Helen has 3 different abilities that could work here. So she's first up a healer, and then second up a hero buffer, and then third option that you have with her is a troop DPS. So what you want is this and this, and what you don't want is this. If you end up in a situation, right, where you find yourself in a bad spot because you have messed up the skills, you can actually reset them. So if you want to change the skills, you could reset them. This is not expensive. It is only going to cost you 100. That is not very expensive. Cheap. And that is Flora basically in a nutshell. I mean, now I'm going to show you who I would pick. So I would pick Helen. And then in addition to Helen, Olivia. Definitely a good option. Karin. Oh. Not what I wanted to do. Come on. Right. But also, who's really good is like perfect. Like, this is perfect. Karin is the perfect addition to Flora. So if you have Karin, you might want to pick up Flora because these two have really good synergy. And then also, this is a good option. Good. Because better than Helen, right? So Helen is not the best healer, but she's a healer and a buffer, right? So depending on your situation, you might switch that. Helen, more damage. Sakura, Ayana Koji, more healing. It's really easy, right, to understand. So now let's look at the next hero that I was asked to look at, and that is actually Karin. So perfect coincidence here. So Karin is a physical damage dealer, and really she's so simple we don't have to talk about her really all that much. DPS, right? That's straight out a DPS option. Next up, we have buff. So really simple again, you have DPS and you have a buff. And you have a debuff. And this is a really good combination. This is perfect. This is one of the most perfect DPS that I've seen in the game, right? There's other DPS which are cool, but this is just DPS. Perfect DPS. Really just straight out DPS. Like straight out DPS. There's nothing else to say about Kana other than that if you want damage, you want to actually, get Kana. So what you want is this. What you want is this. What you don't want is this. What you also don't want is this. What you also don't want is this. Also don't want is this, right? And then you can, I would say this, yes. This, question mark. This, also question mark. I'm not sure, right? Like, let's just say, don't know, right? As for her skills, I would probably say, you might want to go at least 4 in here. And then I would say probably you also want to go 4 here. And then depending on how many points you have, right? Because you can get a maximum of 15 points, but this is if you pulled Kana multiple times. So the amount of points you get is you get, 5 plus 1 every 10 levels. So you get 10, right? So without pulling her more often, I would say that, what you want is you want to have the first one moving towards 7, right? And if you put the first one into 7, then you can really only do okay, so wait. So if you can only do that, then you want to put 7 2, 1 is what I would do, right? This is what I would do. If I can only get the 10 points from level 50, right? And you want to at least get this to like level 4 really early. And there is a specific reason why you want to get this to like level 4 at the start of the game. And that is because at level 4, you get a boost from attack. And then at level 7, you get a boost from attack. And that is your main DPS. And that's all. I hope this video has helped people out. I know that it's a long video and that we've covered a lot of different things, but there is sadly just that much to talk about. So, peace. I might put timestamps for people that are too lazy to look for them by themselves, but I might forget.